We're back for the wonderful Panda reviews, Panda game reviews this time, not a movie. Going to talk about a Nintendo 64 game, South Park, in the spirit of supporting Thanksgiving, since at least the first chapter is pretty Thanksgiving-y. So, pretty
It's
slim
turkey
pickings.
centric. Yeah.
Pretty slim pickings for Thanksgiving retro video games.
Well, that's just it. I mean, retro or not, there's just not a lot of Thanksgiving themed games. And it's funny because Kelly and I talking off mic, we're like, we're gonna have to the last time we recorded, like, oh, we're gonna have to do a slapdash because we did the two Halloween ones. But I have gotten messages from a few people over the past year asking if there's gonna be a Thanksgiving slapdash. So I mean, there is now that we're looking for games to cover, there is a huge void here.
Yeah, I think I was struggling. Of course, I had recommended oysters as being incorporated as one of the things. I think oysters should replace the mugs of beer that are up there. And you're eating oysters, and then you can do a turkey and a
You know,
can of
part of the
cranberry
Kelly
sauce.
character though is pounding beers. That's
Oh,
that's who Kelly Tool is.
Kelly Tool eats oysters too. So, having introduced you to oyster dressing, I think that
Now I
that
really I want to try it. It's like each year more and more. I'm like, I gotta try this.
that, that
That and the other, since we're talking about Thanksgiving, this isn't really getting off topic. The other thing I want to do is go out into our beautiful nature that we still have left, find a majestic living creature that God gave life to, the gift of life to, flapping around, murder it with my bare hands, and then have an actual like fresh turkey at Thanksgiving. That's another thing that I want to try.
but you're not gonna hunt with a rifle or a bow. You're gonna
No,
barehand it, huh?
I'm gonna hunt with a rifle. So I grew up in the city. And my dad, who should have known better because he grew up on a farm but didn't hunt as a kid, when I started hunting, and my dad got into hunting and I got into it around the same time. I was a kid, but my dad was a grown adult, obviously. He started getting into hunting. He took me out with him. It was his first hunting trip as well, even though he grew up on a farm. So now he's been in the city from the time he was a kid. So he's a city guy now. The farm life is long gone. It's bled out of him. Um, so we go to this mountain range in Pennsylvania, Tioga Mountains, and we're there. And the owner of the land was like, "Hey, you're going to see all kinds of cool animals that we have in the mountains here and stuff like that." He's like, obviously, stay away from bears. Stay, you know what I mean? Do the. He's giving us kind of a rundown. He's like, "Watch out for turkeys." And we're like, okay, watch out. Like he's messing with us because we're from the city and we don't know better. We're like, all right, we'll watch out for the turkeys. God damn it. We 20 feet into the woods. We see like 30 turkeys wandering around. And of course, we're not scared. Turkeys are things we buy in grocery stores. They're little birds. What could they do? Not so little, but birds. What could they do? Like, oh, it's the big scary turkeys. They immediately charged us and started attacking us. All of these turkeys just kind of lunging at us, trying to take us out. So this game speaks to me on a personal level. Brings back flashbacks, like war flashbacks.
And there you were with no snowballs, no dodgeballs, no plunger
Yep.
gun. What's a man to do? Okay. All right. Well, I think so any top line reactions to the game overall before we get started?
So this is an interest. I'm glad we're doing this game in general because I think this game is fun. It has its moments, but I also don't think it's a great game. And this is like we've said before, like we did a bad game with Atari 2600, but that's just a terrible game and known to be a terrible game. So I think this will give people a better sense, at least for me. I don't know what your reaction is to it yet, but as I pick apart what I liked and don't like, a better sense of where we're coming from.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, it's not a great game, but when you deal a lot with IP um, issues of different games that have come out running off of different IP, they're usually not very good, but usually it's this combination of poor execution of the IP and poor gameplay, and melded together, that results in a horrible experience. They got at least half of it right. They got the IP
Yes.
right.
Yes.
So, in my opinion, so I think that's where a good way to go. So let's just go ahead and get started. Fun factor will be the first category. I'm going to go with the four because you are playing South Park characters. You can do multiplayer with two South Park characters. You get to play Eric Cartman. How can that not be fun? And so there are aspects of that that I think it is an enjoyable game to play. It is, and I'll get into it a little bit more when we get into replayability. It's it's a tad on the repetitive side, shall we say, but still it's fun. So I think just getting into it, for a little while and then back out, you're going to enjoy it. I think if you like South Park. So I'm going with four for fun factor.
I'm going to repeat a lot of what Kelly just said, although I'm going to be a little harsher this time. Usually Kelly's the one who comes down a little tougher. I'm going to go three. You'll find a lot of reviews online saying that this is a terrible game. And you're not going to hear me say this is a great game at any point during here, but it is fun, and especially in relatively small doses, as Kelly said. It can get repetitive pretty quickly. But if you just pop, if you're a South Park fan, and this is any kind of licensed IP, like Kelly said, unfortunately, a lot of them are slapped together really quickly. This I read was made in 6 months from the time that they got the license to the game being done and ready to come out, which is incredible. That would be fast now, let alone back then without, the technological advances that we have now. So it was slapped together really quickly. Unfortunately, with a lot of these kind of games, your enjoyment of the IP is really going to gauge how much mileage you're going to get out of this. But if you are a South Park fan, and I would say particularly, I haven't followed South Park as much in the last couple of years, but being a fan of those early South Park episodes, seeing something like this where you are walking around in South Park, does it look fantastic? No, we'll get into that in the visuals, but South Park doesn't look fantastic, especially back then. So you're walking around in South Park, that's kind of awesome. So if you're a South Park fan, you're going to get more enjoyment out of this than I think people will lead you to believe. But its shelf life isn't very long.
Fair. That's absolutely fair. Controls. Now we're talking about the N64 game. This is pretty well built for an N64 controller. Once you've acclimated to an N64 controller, you got a trigger and you got a joystick, and that's about all you need. Now you can toggle between different types of your snowballs can go from pristine, well, kind of gray white to a yellow one that includes splatter damage, and so that's a nice South Parkian touch to it. But I think really solid, no really strong complaints on it. Certainly playable. You don't have to be. It's not like a high end platformer where you've got to like, oh, I've got to hit this exactly right. You have some latitude to just carpet bomb with particularly snowballs, and the different weapons have kind of a different reload ish, if you will, speed. Infinite snowballs, which is nice. I did struggle that. Um, you could still generate snowballs when you're standing on asphalt. I felt that was a gap, but but the but it's
You're writing letters to
it's
acclaim. Listen, guys, just playing South Park, the Nintendo 64 one.
I I feel there's a plot hole. How are they able to generate infinite snowballs over asphalt? But I'm going to go with the three for controls.
Yeah, again, I think we're pretty much in line here. I think it controls fine if you are used to the Nintendo 64 controller. I think anytime we're talking about a Nintendo 64 game, the controller, just like if we were doing a Jaguar game, it's a very distinct controller and it's not going to be for everybody. Now, with Nintendo 64, there is different options now. Like I have for the Warrior controllers, for example, which kind of realign it into a controller configuration we're all a little more used to, not the Trident kind of thing. This game was built off the Turok 2 engine, so it controls as good as Turok 2, So if you got excited when I said that, you're gonna like them. If you don't love Nintendo 64 controllers, this isn't gonna convince you any otherwise. So I'm gonna have to go with a three.
Yeah, and I poked around on a few reviews of this game to just kind of see what some other folks were saying about it, see where maybe my experience differed or aligned with it. And the one piece, because I've not done a lot with Turok, either the original Turok or Turok 2, um, there was a couple mentions of saying this is kind of a reskin Turok to a degree, which I think partially you get there because it's the same engine, and so you're going to have
Yeah.
a similar feel to it. But I thought it worked out just fine. So difficulty. So this again is just finding that sweet spot between a game, it's not easy, super too easy or too hard. It's this is it, does it hit the right spot? Is it, enough to keep you engaged and challenged and all that? Um, I'm gonna go with a three. It's reasonable difficulty. It's not super easy, but it does seem like the main skill you need to have is endurance. That to whatever you need to do, you need to do it a lot on each level. And then, the change is okay. Now am I not only knocking out the turkeys, I'm knocking out what are referred to as tanks in the game, which are larger versions of whatever you're going after that can generate more of the smaller version. But that's about it. But it you have to work sometimes, particularly a couple of the turkey mobs, which apparently Mike has more expertise with than I thought he did. But that being said, yeah, I think three's a reasonable score for this, so that's what I'm going to go with for that.
Yeah, I was kind of going back and forth between two and three on this one. And I think you're right. I think the difficulty is fine where it's at. It's that repetitiveness once that starts to set in that starts to it weighs down in multiple categories for me, that repetitiveness. And this is one of them. It's the difficulty is going to set in from a war of attrition kind of thing as enemies respawn and over again, and you have to kill them. It just gets repetitive. It's not that it's getting any more difficult as you're doing it. So I would say a three.
Fair. Replayability. We've been mentioning it a couple times already. I'm gonna go with the two for replayability. I struggle a little bit because it is a game I will go back and play, but not for very long. And being the big sports guy that Mike is, I'll use an analogy here with weightlifting. So I'm sure it's gonna be old hat to him, but for certain, like a clean and jerk, which is not probably what you think it is, Mike, but it's a weight thing. You've got the
Sure
weight
it
up
is,
above.
Kelly.
Yeah, you've got your the weight up above your head. You have to hold it there for a couple moments before it counts. You just can't say, "Oh, it was above my head, it counts." There has to be a duration of time. And I think to score well in replayability, it's not that, "Oh yeah, I'll put it in and play it a little bit." You've got to play it a significant amount of time. And that's not really what I'm about with this game because I do like to kind of check back in and do some things. Um, the one thing that is maybe helps on replayability, but I'm gonna stick with my two, is highly accessible cheat codes so that you can God mode it or go into one level where you can turn on and off a variety of things. There's a line art version, which I'm not really sure why anyone would want to do that part because it's almost invisible at that point in time. But there's a lot of infinite ammo, or you don't take any damage, etc., or you can jump to any level at any time. So that helps on replayability because if you want to say, I don't want to start at the beginning of this, I want to jump into a portion of another level that I enjoyed. But overall, it's as we've hit on a couple times, there's a lot of repetition. If you've kind of worked your way all through the game, there's not a huge desire to go through all that repetition multiple additional times. So I'm going to go with a two for that.
Yeah, we're in line again on this one. It's going to be a two for me. It's fun in short doses, especially if you're a South Park fan. I don't know if you're not a South Park fan how much enjoyment you're going to garner from this, but if you're a South Park fan, walking around South Park in a 3D environment back then, not now when we can do so much more, but back then, would have been pretty awesome. You also get to choose which of the kids you want to play as. They come equipped with a bunch of one-liners and things that sound impressive for a cartridge game. There's a lot of great voice samples on this, but just like everything else in the game, it gets repetitive pretty quick. Whichever kid you choose, their stats aren't any different. Like they're no faster, stronger, or anything like that. They just it's what one-liners and hand you see. One-liners you hear and hand you see holding the weapon kind of thing. It doesn't change the gameplay in any way. So it gets repetitive way too quickly. And it's funny when I did play this before. I don't know if it was when it originally came out, but I had played this before. When I popped it back in so that we could do this review, it was like, oh, this is really cool. I don't know why people don't like this. And then not too long into it, I was like, this is so repetitive. Like it it's great when if you haven't played it in a little while, pop it in, you're gonna have a lot of fun, but you're gonna turn it off just as quickly and probably not pop it in again for a while.
Yeah. Although Die Evil Turkey from Cartman, I can hear a lot. I enjoy that. But it's a shame we use quote for our Panda movie reviews. It's a shame we don't have a quote category for the games because Die Evil Turkey would be my quote for sure. But that part's nice, but that's kind of where I sit as well on that. Okay, appeal, confined by the power of the particular platform. So we want to kind of be fair and not put Atari 2600 up against a PlayStation system and say how do they compare to each other? So it is given the limitations of the system. And by and large, Nintendo, in my opinion, Nintendo 64 games are really fun to play. They're they are 3D. You're kind of moving in space, but the number of polygons are limited, the shading's limited. There's heavy use of fog to kind of not give you a whole lot of depth of field. That's definitely present in this game as well. However, South Park's not also very good looking. I mean, by design, very simplistic and very blocky and paper cutout kind of feel to it. Particularly early era really leaned into that hard since the original was paper cutouts moving around. I'm gonna go with a three because it's for what it's emulating, if you were gonna kind of 3D it, it's not a bad execution of that. So when you do an adequate execution of not particularly great animation, I'm not sure what the fair judgment is on that. So I said, yeah, I'll go middle of the road. I'll go with three. It's not a beautiful game by any stretch of the imagination, but uh, the turkeys look like South Park turkeys. The aliens look like South Park aliens. The opening sequence of South Park is pretty beat for beat well reflected at the beginning of this game, which was impressive, but in 3D in quotes. So, so I'm going to go three.
Now, I just want to point out the middle of the road would be two and a half.
Yeah, that's fair. But we don't have, so I rounded up. I went middle of the road and rounded because I'm a appropriate raider. So,
This is actually for me, this is the hardest category because the game doesn't look good. So as Kelly hit on, Nintendo 64's weakest area is probably the visuals. Because they stuck with the cartridge and because it didn't have a lot of RAM, you this actually uses the RAM expansion. There's not a ton of games that require it, but there are some games that utilize it for different things. This is one of them to get a slightly better frame rate out of it if you switch it into a higher resolution mode with the RAM expansion. Um, all of that being said, Nintendo 64, because of those limitations, is known for not having a great draw distance. Not that PlayStation and Saturn's draw distances were amazing or anything like that, but this is notably worse as a whole. Also, because of the lack of RAM, textures weren't great. So you get a lot of like smudging textures together and things like that in Nintendo 64 games. And this isn't the worst use of the fog. That's Superman. It's not the worst use of the fog, but it's not great either. Like the draw distance is bad even by Nintendo 64 standards, but not the worst. That being said, this is where it gets hard for me. Just like two of the reviews that if we ever revisited them someday, I'd have to question where I landed were my perfect score for Road Rash and my score for Berserk for 2600. And it's the graphics in both of them. The reason I gave a 5 in Road Rash is because for the time, it was doing some really cool effects that people didn't think Genesis could pull off. And Berserk looks like the arcade game. Neither game, though, looks good. They just look, they're doing what they're supposed to do. And we do, like Kelly said, we try to rate these to the hardware, not against other hardware, different eras and things like that. That wouldn't be fair. So South Park looks bad. And especially, like Kelly said, in those early days, the original short film was cut out paper. So they kind of stuck with that visual. It looks a little more polished now compared to what it used to, but it looked pretty rough. This is a pretty accurate depiction of South Park. And you get to walk around South Park. You get to walk around this fictional town. And as far as turning them into 3D characters, because the polygon counts were pretty low back then, I would have actually expected them to look a little worse than they do. They don't look so bad. And that's probably because they're kind of simplistic characters to start with. So it's kind of tough because the game doesn't look great, but the source material doesn't look great. And the hardware is known for, the draw distance issues and things like that. So because of that, I'm going to go to a 3. If I if I were to look at this in a vacuum, it'd probably be lower. But taking the hardware limitations into consideration and the source material, I'm going to go with a 3.
Fair enough. Let me do a little math here real quick. All right. See if I'm right after I edit this. The numbers are good. But I think that ends up with Mike at 14 and me at 15. So we'll kind of sit in there. They'll nestle in there. We'll have the throw up on the screen here kind of where that is on our lists so you can see that. And we'll see that. It was nice to get back to this one. This was a prop opportunity for me. I could have brought my cartridge up and showed it, but I didn't. I forgot it. It's just too far to walk down to the system to get it. So, but I have one. So, but yeah, it was a fun. It is fun. It's just it is also not the pinnacle of gameplay, and a little bit on the repetitious side.
Yeah, it's a fun game in short doses,
Yeah.
is my kind of take on it.
Excellent. Any other thoughts? So that's our Thanksgiving game review. Should have done turkeys for this one, I guess, but we'll stick with pandas because that's our brand.
We could do little pilgrim pandas.
That's again more graphic work for me. We'll see.
Also, I
Maybe.
should say now then, if Kelly does insensitive Native American pandas, I distance myself from that.
Yeah, you're good. Pilgrim outside of the fact that poor judgment would have to be executed to go with a Native American pandas, which there were none, by the way. Um, uh,
That's racist.
Pilgrim hat. No, I don't think so. I'm fairly sure the panda was not indigenous to North America.
I don't think you're allowed to say that.
Okay. I think I am, but we'll go ahead. Anyway, a pilgrim hat's a lot easier to slap on a graphic, so I'll give that some consideration. But I think you're probably gonna just get pandas, folks. Sorry. So, cool. Well, we'd appreciate it if you would like and subscribe to the Bog Panda YouTube channel. Included in that subscription will be the daily dose of Hard No, the world's shortest podcast. There's some merchandise you can take a look at, and Bog Panda Vision, which is our micro homebrew site where we provide Nintendo an NES game, a whole bunch of Game Boy games, or a series of Game Boy games for Slapdash, Mike's creation, lacking a Thanksgiving, but that's about the only holiday. Arbor Day and Thanksgiving at this point are the only missing ones in the
See, that's the
Slapdash
only
series.
problem. If we do Thanksgiving, then people are gonna be like, "Where's Easter slapdash?"
Where's Flag Day?
Yeah.
Where's we'll have to Juneteenth. It'll be, yeah, be careful on that one. But there are a lot of Slapdash games out there. They're all free. Grab the ROMs on that. There's a couple online things as well. Check those out. And we appreciate you watching, folks.
Thanks, everybody.
Bog Panda.